A Hat in Time. What can I say? This game exudes the late 90s and early 2000s. If you haven't known already, the game is a callback to the subgenre of platformer known as collect-a-thons. Collect-a-thons focus on collecting various items to get through stages, unlock items, and just overall progress through the game and its story. A Hat in Time does all of these things extremely well, but is A Hat in Time really as good as everyone is saying it is? In this review, I'll be analyzing A Hat in Time and telling you whether or not the hype and positivity around it is earned. Let's begin. What's good, everybody out there on YouTube? This is your man Shadicstick, dropping some hot farraga on this mic, and we're reviewing A Hat in Time. We'll be analyzing 4 major aspects of the game: gameplay, graphics, music, and story. These are all essential in the analyzation of A Hat in Time, and are also what I feel are the main focuses of the game. A Hat in Time is one of the most polished games I've played in years. Considering this game was a crowdfunded game on Kickstarter and came out like it did, shines a light of hope in the crowdfunded games market. A Hat in Time fundamentally plays somewhere in between a 3D Mario game and an adventure-style Sonic game, which gives it a good sense of speed and platforming, keeping you pulled in throughout the entire experience. I do have to say, at first glance, I thought the game was going to be on the easier side when it was shown off years ago, but now that I've played the final iteration of the game, I do have to say it has its challenges. It's a somewhat challenging game. You never really feel like the game is unfair in any way when it comes to platforming and enemy placement. Usually when you die, it's a result of you, the player, and not the game, which means that you have to adapt and get good in order to traverse any of the challenges it presents you. That's not to say it's an exceptionally hard game, but if I were to put the game on a scale of 1 to 10 in difficulty, with 5 being the average video game difficulty, I'd rate it a 6.5. It's definitely harder than any 3D Mario, but again, it is only above the average of most video games difficulty. Now let's talk about the controls. Again, in terms of a speed and platforming balance meter, it falls right in the middle of 3D Mario and Adventure Sonic, and I love it. The game has a ton of skill-based platforming that makes players utilize all tools at command, such as diving, double jumping, hesitated double jumping, sliding, and more. The game feels tight but floaty at the same time, which allows freedom in your platforming but giving you, the player, as much control as possible. Honestly, there's nothing more to say about the controls but that they're fantastic. I'm also glad that the game allows for GameCube controller support, which is phenomenal. I honestly recommend using a GameCube controller for the most authentic collect-a-thon experience. One of the most overlooked portions of this game is the abilities, which I love to use. While some are more situational than others, they all provide something new to the gameplay, allowing for better attacks, alternative routes, and overall just faster gameplay. Many of the more important abilities are linked to various hats that Hat Kid, the main character, can equip. One hat allows for faster run speed, one unlocks unseeable paths for a limited time, and another slows down time, and so on and so on. These hats also have cool skins that you equip along with other colors in your personnel. The other abilities are linked to badges, which act more as ability upgrades or items that you can use. You cannot doubt the ability of Hat Kid though, when she can do a Kamehameha, can you? You guys may be wondering, Shadic, I thought this was a collect-a-thon. What is there to collect? All I have to answer is that there's a ton of stuff to collect. The first major thing you'll be collecting is the timepieces, which are basically the equivalent to Super Mario Sunshine's shine sprites. They're integral to the story, but they act mostly as a gameplay element to finish stages. The other major item you'll be collecting will be pawns, as they allow you to buy badges and upgrade your abilities. Other less major collectibles include rift tokens, which allow you to basically get cool things such as remixes and costumes at random, or treasures, which also give you rift tokens and something cool to look at in your spaceship. Honestly, This gameplay is some of the best in a 3D platformer in a while, and I'm glad another great game followed it, that being Super Mario Odyssey. Hopefully A Hat in Time has reopened the door for 3D platformers to retake the limelight in this age of gaming that is littered with crappy, half-finished games filled with microtransactions. Although the graphics are simplistic, A Hat in Time is honestly an amazing looking game. While it's not the most detailed game ever, its art style allows it to look amazing while using some great graphical effects such as depth of field and motion blur to create a great looking experience. Again, I can't tell you how much I love the cartoony art style of this game. The art before each individual chapter is amazing. The artists for this game did an amazing job in both the 2D and the 3D realm. Honestly, this has been one of the most aesthetically pleasing games I've played in the past 5 years. If you haven't seen gameplay of this game, please go check out some gameplay of this game on max settings for PC, and you'll see the game looks great. The music in A Hat in Time is phenomenal. Every song fits the game perfectly, but every song doesn't fit every stage, and that's my favorite part. They've managed to make a soundtrack iconic to this game while giving each track its own unique feel. I also love how they managed to somehow mix every type of instrumentation they can into the soundtrack. Some tracks heavily feature strings and woodwinds, giving the areas an island or countryside feel akin to something that would be in, say for instance, The Legend of Zelda, while some have these great underlying brass lines that I appreciate myself as a brass player. And then there are some songs like the boss music, which have this rock metal vibe that really heavily use drum sets and guitars, which basically just increases the intensity of these boss fights. Honestly, this soundtrack is one of the best video game soundtracks of 2017 and possibly of all time. I'm glad the music was an area where the devs didn't cut corners. Most indie games, in my honest opinion, tend to cut corners by either having lackluster soundtracks or merely only having a few songs. A Hat in Time does the complete opposite of both by serving up an amazing diverse OST on a platter. This portion of the video is gonna be a bit shorter than the other portions due to me not wanting to spoil it for you guys, but I will try my best to convey this story without any major spoilers. A Hat in Time opens up with Hat Kid flying about in space to get home, but along her trip she is stopped by someone in the Mafia. The Mafia person basically winds up saying, "This ship is ours, we're taking it, this is the Mafia's now." The Mafia person basically opens the door to her ship and her vault of timepieces fly out and her ship can no longer be powered. Hat Kid basically has to go down to this planet and collect the timepieces to restore power to her ship and get home. Honestly, this game has a lot more character than I thought it would, and the story is far deeper than the surface lets you believe. With all the zany and wacky characters, you would assume that everything in this game was going amazingly well up until the point of people trying to keep the power of the timepieces from Hat Kid, but you would be sorely mistaken. Playing timers allow you to look at the backstories of each individual level, and actually many times are a lot darker than the other themes the game has in the overall feeling of the game. There's a lot of dark humor and wit throughout the game also that kept me laughing and wanting more. The characters in this game are all extremely lovable, and even the Mafia thugs, and that's saying something. This is one of those stories that will be extremely memorable to me and I feel many others. While it isn't the most extravagant story like your Final Fantasies or your Zeldas, it's really good in its own right and does a great job of keeping the player hooked. A Hat in Time is one of the few Kickstarter games that show crowdfunding can go well. While the game on the surface looks good, really what is beneath is a phenomenal game that should not be slept on. A Hat in Time incorporates all of the makings of a blockbuster hit into a small package. If you haven't played it yet, I highly advise it. The game is on PC, PS4, and Xbox One, so choose your platform of choice and get started. Alright, now guys, if you stuck around this long and you've watched the entirety of the video, Thank you, especially to those who are, you know, newcomers. Thank you. Now, for you guys who've watched my channel before, you watch my channel regularly, I need to talk about some changes real quick. First of all, I am gonna continue doing Let's Plays, but I'm gonna start adding additional Let's Plays to the mix. So basically what I want to do is I don't want to be limited to streaming, especially now since YouTube's seeming to be pooping out with live streaming. I can't set events properly, etc, etc. And on top of that, just getting things set out for a stream is extremely stressful. I also wanted to talk about my Patreon opening back up. I realized I need another source of income just in case YouTube changes the rules again. While the new YouTube rules don't affect me, I would highly appreciate it if you could go and support me on Patreon. Even $1 helps. I am glad you guys stayed around this long. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Hot Faraga turns to cold Blizzaga. Chill out with some of my other videos. We're out of here. Peace. Kiss, kiss.